Good afternoon, esteemed dear colleagues. I'm Konstantin Batovsky. Today we gathered here to discuss how Donbas has changed in this year. These days we are commemorating several anniversaries, very dramatic anniversaries, and this is one more chance to rethink the experience, to learn lessons, to recall what happened a year ago, and to project for the future. Our format will be as follows. First of all, I will give the mic to all participants of our discussion. They will make their statements, and then we will have a Q&A session. Oleksiy, let's start with you. Oleksiy Ryabchin, Batkivshchyna faction in the Verkhovna Rada. As far as I understood, we recollect what happened a year ago. A year ago, I used to work as an adjunct professor in Donetsk University. I'm an expert in economy, but despite this fact, I was very much interested in the socio-economic situation, and I carried out a survey. And I would like to present you the results of this survey. This was done a year ago, and on April 8th, I made a presentation of this survey in Europarlament. I had seven semi-structured interviews with decision makers, both on pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian side, and I tried to understand what was in common between the protesters from both sides. I spoke to pro-Russian protesters, pro-Ukrainian protesters, with decision makers, and with ordinary people. Now I would like to present you only the last slide, only the conclusion. What was in common between both sides? If we remove the most radical ideas, then we clearly understand that people in both camps put forward economic demands, poverty, raise of utility bills, prices. Everybody was afraid to lose job, and all people wanted to preserve social security. And when speaking to protesters on both sides, you definitely understand that all these are things which are the most important for them. And actually, both parties were united with Maidan values, although the pro-Russian side did not realize that actually, despite some pro-Russian ideas, they valued the same things like good governance, no corruption, equal rights, fair justice, and they were in favor of human rights. What was also important that they opposed war and anti-war vision was peculiar for both sides, although one of them was versus Russian forces, another was versus NATO, while these are Russian forces which brought war. Also, both parties wanted more power to the region, and some of them proclaimed that federalization was needed, but when I asked them what they meant under federalization, I discovered that they did not understand what federalization meant for them. When I asked the question about decentralization, I understood that all of them wanted more power delivered to the region, delegated to the region, and unfortunately not so many people were aware that this is a very complicated, very comprehensive process which requires involvement of professionals. And what also united both camps was attitude to Russia, while to one party this was a customs union, but to another party these were pragmatic economic relations with Russia. And people still not always recognize two things, that Kremlin and Russia, these are different things. And some people who responded to our questions, these were people who did not support Maidan, but actually they wanted to resolve the issues within one country. And unfortunately there were forces which wanted to call themselves the Donetsk region, and now we see what has happened. And if we look at the region, we immediately understand that in Donetsk never there were any preconditions to religious or ethnic or any other sorts of conflicts. Within this month, I visited Ireland, Brussels, and I realized that the biggest problem in the East is the outer force, Russia. And I suggest that we start discussion of the people's situation with people in the region, and initiate discussions with those people who live there. Whether both sides of the conflict had preserved their positions. Yes, they have preserved it, and on the other hand, something has added. Now people in the Donetsk region wish to bring, to restore the situation as it was at the beginning. They want to restore the region. What could be done? On the one hand, we understand that there are no other ways to resolve the conflict than via a peaceful way, that is, diplomatic way. On the other hand, we have to find some diplomatic solution, but strong diplomatic solution. And if Minsk agreements won't be implemented, then the package sanctions that strong measures which are already designed and ready for application, they will be applied to Russia, and much depends on Russia. And what is important, we should have to close the border between Ukraine and Russia, and I think that finally we will manage to do this. And as soon as the border is closed, all Ukrainians from Kyiv and Donetsk will come to agreement without third party. Now let's listen to other statements and then answer questions.
I would like to give the floor to Diana Berg, a person who organized pro-Ukrainian activities in Donetsk, and now We were in Kiev and Maidan. Those people who are here, these are people who have chosen Ukraine with their heart and soul, but we associate ourselves with Donetsk, with Donbas, and today we understand that we have something to say to both the central government and to public, because the process is taking place with Donbas, in Donbas, unfortunately, are not covered properly by the state. Now, a couple of words about Donetsk being so diverse and the movement that started in the city. That was a movement from down there, from bottom up. Good afternoon. I remember how we were preparing this presentation a year ago. In March last year, for the first time, we came with Oleg and we spoke in the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We were talking about Donetsk, about our meetings and problems of Donbas, about what we saw then. We were scared then, but we had hope that everything will be fine. And a year later now, you ask what has changed, and the answer is very simple. Everything has changed. We lost homes. We don't see our families, our friends. People left to different parts of Ukraine. We have no job of the past, and even the favorite cup, you miss it. I would have never believed that the favorite cup is so dear and plays such an important role in life. We did lose everything, but we gained a lot. I'm talking about myself, but I'm sure that my friends feel the same. This year, I lived in Odessa, Lviv, Kyiv, Mariupol, and I realized how big, how beautiful our country is, how wonderful Ukrainians are. And no one looked at me differently because I'm from Donetsk. People were helping me, supporting me, but nevertheless, I am as close as possible to my lost home. I live in Mariupol now. I cannot leave Donbas. I see the problems of Donbas from the inside. Any initiatives which are the initiatives related to occupied zone, they reflected on the Ukrainian territory. Starting from the canceling pension payments, introducing the regime of passing to the territory. One of the biggest problems now is isolation. I invite all of you, please invite Donbas, go there, go for a week, you will see problems. Besides the volunteers and journalists, people are afraid to go there. Mariupol is a small Donetsk. It's like what Donetsk was a year ago. If you want to see what Donetsk was like a year ago, you can see it now in Mariupol. It's like in archipelago, certain forms of life develop. Same way now, there in Ukrainian Donbas, the citizens feel themselves isolated, like they are on an island, not to lose the region so that it's not extinguished. We need to establish communications. We shouldn't leave this region isolated. Today I recollected that exactly a year ago, on the 27th of March, we organized this event for children in Donetsk. Oleg, you remember, we were scared to go to the meeting because 2 weeks before that, some people were killed at a pro-Ukrainian meeting, but we still were going there, that the children were drawing on pavement how they love Ukraine. They had yellow and blue balls with them, but I would like us not to meet here in 2 years, but I would like us to have such briefing in Donetsk so that we can discuss how to develop the region. Thank you, Diana. And do you believe, do you feel that there's a gap between Donbas and Ukraine? Can we say, are we a single country or not? Yes, we are a single country, united country, and the isolation I'm talking about is just about territories, but Ukraine is not territories. Ukraine is people, and I don't feel any gap. Maybe I'm trying not to feel the gap. Maybe that's subjective opinion. But I consider myself to be citizen of Ukraine. Ukraine is my motherland. My home is Donetsk, but Ukraine is my big country. Ukraine has become my home. Thank you. Now, I would like you to develop that thesis. There are so many problems left there because I am the citizen of Ukrainian Donbas. I see them. The first is how to get to Donbas, because the road, Mariupol is a city which is cut off from Ukraine, talking about railway, but the bus travel is very complicated because there are all those checkpoints there, and it's a special adventure crossing the checkpoints. Very often at checkpoints you see that there's no state approach and state strategy towards Donbas, because rules change very quickly. There are too many services involved into the process. As a rule, there's no coordination between them, but that all impacts specific people. They make life more complicated for them. And now I would like to ask the professionals about why does it happen this way, how to overcome all these things at the level of political solutions. Oleksiy Haran, the professor of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy.
I would support my colleague Oleksiy, who described the underlying reasons of events in Donetsk and some figures. There was a poll led in early April last year. There were only up to 30% of people who wanted to separate Donbas from Ukraine. Of course, this is a high figure, but 70% were opposing separation of Donbas. These figures describe the positions of forces, and this also proves that without Russian infiltration to Donbas, the situation would develop very differently. Now about your question about passing by the checkpoints, etc. I regularly attend Donbas. I attended the settlements along the delineation line, like Pisky, like Stanitsa Luganska, like Mariupol, of course, and to your question about checkpoints, I cannot answer. Actually, probably we have to approach the Ukrainian bureaucrats. I drive my own car to Stanitsa Luganska. Yes, I passed all the checkpoints. Yes, I provided explanation where I am going and why. And actually, I did not have too much problems. Now, there are special passages and special pass-bys in order to enter occupied territory. Well, in this way, we speak about different things. You describe that Mariupol is separated, even cut off from other territory of Ukraine. Actually, it's not a problem. Sometimes you drive on and you are asked about special pass, and if you go to Mariupol, you won't get all these questions. When you go to Mariupol, you simply show your passport and explain where you go and why. And if you wish to enter the occupied territory, then there are problems. And of course, we should try to resolve it, and we should work more. Probably it's not a question to me as a politologist, and I understand that there should be a procedure in place, and it should be simple and nevertheless efficient. And when along the delineation line, people came to servicemen at the checkpoints and said that they had a mother who was ill and they wanted to attend, or a pregnant woman approached to a serviceman and explained that there was 1 week before delivery and she wanted to go to Ukrainian territory to deliver a child. And whether do you think that Ukrainian state has any full-fledged strategy how to develop relations with occupied Donbas and how to work with those people who feel themselves abandoned in the occupied territory? We need such a strategy. Another question is how to shape this strategy and how this strategy should look like. We understand that in the territory there are many people who are pro-Ukrainian in their orientation, who hesitate which party to join, and we have to clarify this. What are the threats of Minsk agreements? What does Putin want? Putin wants to legitimize the militants and to make Ukrainian Donbas the gray zone. What should be counter strategy? The counter strategy should be that unless Ukrainian control is restored, there would be no funding and no state funding into this territory. I think that it's useless to deliver support, to deliver assistance to this territory without any guarantees that Ukrainian money won't be used against Ukraine. On the other hand, there are many people who really need assistance, and probably we should deliver target support to these people. I think that we should close the border and then put on Ukraine all the responsibilities to rebuild this territory. I agree with the concept that these territories were recognized as temporarily occupied, and I agree that all possible assistance and resumption in pension payments will be only after elections in line with Ukrainian legislation. On the other hand, this will frozen the conflict. But we should be realists that we are unable to regain support, to regain our control, and unable to do something in this situation. Maybe we should separate ourselves from with the wall and try to build up new Ukraine without Donbas. No, I don't. I disagree with you. I think that objective of Putin is to put the salt on this wound all the time, to stir up the situation all the time, distracting our efforts, and in this aspect, we should separate the territory of Ukraine from this stirred up territory. And in order to be able to develop, for ordinary people, there should not be walls for communication, but for the militants, there shall be the wall. There is a cabinet decision about building up a wall, and it looks like a series of fortifications. I do not know how it looks like, but I believe that we should build up such fortifications. The weakness of the first ceasefire, the results of the first Minsk agreement was that we did not build such fortifications, and unfortunately we lost several territories, and we have to build up such fortifications because there might be attacks on Mariupol, on Artemis, etc. We should be able to defend ourselves, and I do not see other way out. Now, for residents of Mariupol, each statement made by Kyiv that the city will be conquered, it sounds like a real threat. There is a communication problem. When the Mariupol residents called for state bureaucrats saying that please come up and do something because we are under attack. And today, Mariupol residents say, if you expect that tomorrow the city will be occupied, invaded, then please come up and remove all of us.
There is a war, there's an enemy on the border with Mariupol. There should be the system of protection, of defense there. But they hear many different voices from Kiev. There are a lot of panicking voices during war. Voices are different, but the situation is, yes, there should be defense facilities there. Unfortunately, I need to leave, and in the end, I would like to say a couple of words. Just talking about Mariupol, we heard from our European partners the red line. The Baltsova was a red line, but now, unfortunately, not. The Baltsova was just surrendered. In Mariupol, it's a serious red line besides the reinforcement facilities, very serious diplomatic line and sanctioned line. But local authorities, regional authorities, and executive authorities have to understand, the government have to understand that Donetsk and Lugansk do not get clear signals that these are Ukrainian territories. Houses are ruined, infrastructure is ruined, and it gives the signal to people. No one wants to invest here. No one wants to reconstruct that. They act rationally. They say, why to restore what could be destroyed again? I believe it's wrong logic. Like in Detroit or in New York, when there were the blocks with broken glasses, the crime was growing, and first thing they did, they put windows, put glasses, but also in Donbas there are no social lifts, there are same civil servants there. If they are replaced, then they're replaced by the civil servants who are suspected in collaborationism. Young people should, and patriotic forces should be given the chance, and then Donbas will see that from times of Maidan, things have changed, and there's an initiative to look to Ukraine, at Ukraine. This year, There's another group of people who are left without their homes, people who have to find refuge in other parts of Ukraine. They are IDPs, internally displaced person, and I would like Oleh Saakyan to say a couple of words about what's happening with these people. Are they now united in a certain force? Is their strategy in relation to IDPs and integration of Donbas? Talking about refugees, yeah, that's a big problem. According to official data, it's about 1 million, and according to non-official data, about 2 million people. In summer, this number will grow because the schools and educational establishments will be closed, and they are disappointed because they will not get Russian or Ukrainian diplomas. But a lot has been mentioned about events in Donetsk, and unfortunately till now we have to tell about what was happening a year ago. We have to emphasize that the situation with separatism and with the militants was moderated from outside. We have to talk about that, saying that these movements existed on the territory of the east of Ukraine for years, some from 2003, 2004, similar to Ruski Mir. They have never gained even 1% to the municipal council. They were marginal. They were not supported. We have to say that there was no language, religious or ethnic conflict there. Unfortunately, people still do not understand it. And here we say what's happening now. Today, there is a certain stigmatization of the region, attitude to everyone like one whole. You brought war to our home, that means that you have to fight. And first of all, these IDPs who feel it, when they communicate to local population, many people understand they're trying to help, and they do help IDPs. But unfortunately, there are cases when different things happen. Till now, there's no state program or state understanding of the situation with IDPs. I know that this program is being developed by the Ministry of Social Policy, and what they presented was 3.5 pages, the state program on reintegration. And it's about return of 90% of IDPs to the territories which will be liberated in the future. We talked to the ministry, we managed to introduce some changes, and now the program includes the issues of evacuation and integration on the territory of Ukraine, because all IDPs with who we talked, Diana said about such phenomenon as island, being an island. Everyone identified themselves with Mariupol, with Donetsk, and they lived there. They were studying there, working there. You have everything for us there, the sea, the forest. But now people feel that the motherland is bigger. It's not just the east of Ukraine, it's the whole of Ukraine. And when a person changes the place of residence for 3-5 times, the person sees that the values for people are the same, and it's very important. When IDPs become communicators between occupied territories where they have neighbors, relatives, people they know, and the Ukrainian territories. And that strategy is very important, which state decisions could be passed, because the IDPs, refugees, they have made their choice. They have conditions for life here, but they don't have the previous quality of life. Right, it's difficult for them to live here. Because people perceive that this staying at the camp for refugees is just a temporary place of residence, and here there's no state understanding of further actions. The person should understand for how long the person will stay here. Will he be offered the normal housing? Will he be offered some credit? Or maybe his territories will be liberated and they're just waiting when they will be able to go back home. Unfortunately, there's no message. We only now just say what's happening in the east. The IDPs know that's the war, but the state has only now recognized that these are occupied territories. The next stage should be forming 7 state policies: social, cultural, just social, economic, policy on reintegration of these territories, on the zones of risk around these territories. Thank you. I believe that's all right. That's a correct thesis that we want to see documents, we want to see parliamentary debates around the strategy of reintegration of territories. We want to see debates in the government about the specific steps of help to these people, because now the attitude of the state to the war is like a school girl has attitude to pregnancy. Maybe it will finish by itself. The main thing is not to reveal the secret to anyone. I believe that the attitude at Donbas is like that. Just wage the fight there, and then later we'll get united and everything will be fine. One more thing. Unfortunately, at the level of the state, we're not making any conclusions out of the situation. Here we need to look at what led to the possibility to have this expansion, cultural, economic expansion, military on our territory, and we need to develop the strategy of opposing, because now there's the risk that Russian troops will start moving forward, and Donbas can give us a clue to how this issue is to be addressed. We were saying that people are to be evacuated. All those people who want to leave, they have to leave. We need to do economic evacuation from these territories. It wasn't done, and then we heard about seizure of plants and about taking equipment to the territory of Russia. Then we were talking about evacuation of territorial resources, of the resources. And Donetsk National University now sees problems with restoring its activities just because the time was lost. That's one thing, evacuation. Second thing is attitude to people on these territories. Unfortunately, the perception of people on occupied territories, on territories which are seized, occupied, that roots down to the time of the Second World War, when everyone who's on occupied territory is perceived as collaborant, people who cooperate with the enemy. We first of all need to find out who lives there, because there are many categories of people there, and among them there are collaborants, and these are people who were heading the executive authorities there. They were surrendering territories. Also people who took weapons and who are fighting against Ukraine, but there are many people who have become the hostages of the situation. It's a good topic for a dialogue between Ukrainians and Ukrainians, but we shouldn't be in treating all these people similarly, because the time of occupation of Kiev by fascists, real fascists, there was fascist administration where practically same personnel was working, and Hitler's portraits were in schools. In France, during occupation, there was the same situation. And that is hurting, and we need to discuss these things, that people are people always. They shouldn't be heroes. They shouldn't be going and fighting against the army, which is much stronger than they are, the army which would not stop at anything. Talking about lessons, it's important to say these words and treat this trauma. That's not about collaboration, it's about what's more important, people or territories. Because one cannot exist without another one. Without people, you will not be able to occupy new territories, and without territories, where should people live? And I would like to give the floor to Hennadiy Fisun. Please tell us. One and the same question is asked about the future. How should we live together?
Good afternoon. I would develop on the last question, what is more important, people or territories? And I believe that our today's topic is designed to line up our vision in the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. We had good industrial managers without any strategic political vision, and from that times we inherited that technical bureaucrats, technical professionals, that engineering managers who are unable to develop a vision, and they are unfortunately all their vision was shaped up by technocratic Soviet education, and actually checkpoints, these are the results of that old vision. And if we concentrate on this philosophic problem, the problem of checkpoint, we would be unable to change the future. We have not mastered the brainstorming technique. We have not produced any think tanks able to develop vision. Actually, territories, these are consequences, while people, they are preconditions and underlying causes. And thinking about what is primarily issue, people or territories, we should realize that people should be put first. Of course, we have some very successful managers who became rich using the legacy of the old Ukrainian industry, but today we have reached the point when we have turned our vision into other direction and think about people. Having traveled around Europe, I saw so many ruined ramparts and castles, but I did not see any states. So that's why my suggestion is let us not erect walls between us and Donbas, between us and Russia, because we do not have demarcated border between Ukraine and Russia. Without technical exchanges, let us transfer this dialogue from technical side to the ethnical, religious, etc. Actually, Ukrainian Baroque style, which produced Ukrainian authenticity, so to say. On the other hand, this was a strong industrial Ukraine, which formed another part of Ukrainian national character. And without any balance between, without any synthesis, it won't be possible to resolve the problem. It is not a synthesis, it is synthetics. We are sentenced to live in the future, and in the future there will be a lot of synthetics in everywhere. Even family relations become more complex. Two types of Baroque culture, Baroque type culture and industrial culture have not reached the agreement, and I think that we should study our enemies. We should respect our enemies. It's very foolish not to respect our enemies. I recollect first Maidan. For us, during that first Maidan, when hooligans attacked us, we had Taras Shevchenko monument, very artistically made, very beautiful, very mighty monument. And I clearly remember the fear when that first fighting happened, when we tried to protect our ladies. We wanted to defend them during that heavy fighting in the street. At that time, I thought that we had economic requirements and set economic requirements, but we did not understand how hybrid approaches work. And actually, there is an impression that reanimation, rehabilitation of the old Soviet Union vision now has started from Donbas. And Europa continues to throw money in order to restore peace, and they are getting tired of this costs. And we should understand clearly what we are against, what we are fighting, what we want to cope with. This is the technology, how knowledge should be transferred between generations. We should start this hybrid informational war, and the president has to become philosopher.
So I will start to try to sum it up, and we'll proceed with question and answers. What's happening in Donbas is the war. That's the war that is to be said aloud, so that people who are there understand what's happening. Now, for them, there are military actions going on. They see and they feel the death, and they're not sure from which side it comes. When we talk about war, then people will have to decide for themselves which side they choose. This will force the industry and the army work differently, because according to the latest sociological surveys, there's no trust to law enforcement bodies. People do not believe the army and do not trust it. The only way to overcome it is to start some joint work. The army should become a biggest employee for Donbas. When no one else can give them jobs, the army should be giving the jobs. After the fact of war is recognized, we need to clearly say that We want the war to be over, but we do not need peace at any price. We want to think about how to do it so that the war is not repeated. And then we will understand how weak Minsk agreements are. The citizens of Donbas are not happy because of this peace, because they lived in reality of Minsk I, and there was the Kramatorsk, the attack at Sartana, and preserving the basic positions of Minsk does not address this issue. How to do it so that the war is not repeated while we have this delineation line. We feel the risk of the threat of terrorism. No checkpoint, no stronghold can protect you from act of terrorism. In Mariupol, the bridge was blown off. There were attacks, and there was a military attack with the shooting in the center of the city. Volnovakha was there. With all that system, we are sure that the only way restore the only way is to restore the control of the Russian-Ukrainian border, because there's understanding. When we have the control of the Ukrainian-Russian border, then DNR, LNR, and other terrorist organizations will lose their technical, financial, human technical support, and this will end. These people will leave. We don't see any problem in reintegration. We have the experience of Slaviansk when the city was under occupation, and I saw these events. First day, people were afraid, they were frightened, they did not leave their homes. But second day, they went out to get the humanitarian assistance. Third day, they were walking in the city, and they were thanking Ukrainian army for liberating them. Fourth day, they started pointing at separatists. And the fifth day, they have become demanding that pensions are paid and so on. Everything came back to how it was. In Dnipropetrovsk region, okay, they elected the Party of Regions. The Party of Regions held the second position there. There's no problem with reintegrating these territories. The people who are there, they're waiting for assistance, but attitude to them should be changed. The state should do everything so that those who want to leave, they can leave, and they should get a chance in Ukraine. Now, militia is evacuated from Donetsk. It was tested by the lie detector, and those people who are left there, these are people who want to serve, but with the salary they get, they cannot rent any housing, and they go to where they have housing because they don't feel any support of the state.
То, что на примере Донбасса.
And also we see all the systemic problems of the state in Donbas. We feel the lack of reforms because no one is helping industrial complex. Mariupol is a city which is formed by 3 plants. 2 are private. One is state-owned as of March. That is the company which gives jobs to dozens, thousands of people in Mariupol. Now the state-owned company is being stagnated. We want to get an answer from the state. What have you done? How do you treat your property? Why all these repair works? Why nothing is? Why Azovmash is not operating? We do not understand why, in the result of great tenders of the Ministry of Defense, the people in the east get bread from Zaporozhye, not from Mariupol, where the plant is not operating. Unfortunately, the best way to prove that we are successful will be reforms which will be understood by people. And the reform should start from the East. The problem started in the East and they should finish in the East. And then we'll get a different country in the result. A proposal.
Maybe the power has started to do something. And unfortunately, when in such an event, we just mention that these things should be done, and that's it, would result in nothing. Probably we need to develop some, we need to do some lobbying, we need to develop some recommendations. We should have open or closed meeting with representatives of power, like Irina Gerashchenko, like, I don't know, some members of parliament, organize some public debate, approach to the ministry and demand that they should create the department dealing with occupied territories or the issues of occupied territories. There should be pressure made upon the government. I fully agree. In order to start a process of tactical development, we should first audit the situation. And who is able to carry out this audit in most transparent and honest way? And the second question is how we'll develop these tactics. We say the state, but who is this state? We have light industry. If it should be preoccupied with this issue, like bread mills, like food plants. I also had grain storages in the occupied territories. Maybe we should carry out the audit of this situation about that wealth that is in those enterprises, how many people have jobs there. Maybe we should order some assistance from Russia. I think we should bring together representatives of those organizations which deal with the Donbas, bring people from the government, from presidential administration, bring people from coalition, even opposing factions, and then publish materials from such meeting and thus organize public debate. A short remark and a short example. This work has been being done, and in the executive branch, we have been lobbying establishment of such the ministry about IDPs. And the problem is that former party of the regions wants to get this ministry inside the government, but nobody wishes to give them this ministry. And all the time when we come to this point, all the process stops. If this work is continued and it produces no results, it is necessary to develop recommendations, suggestions, and print them in Ukrainska Pravda. there might be members of parliament who will become interested and they will raise the issue at the parliamentary level, and the process will start in society. And while the state structures will try to avoid publicity in this area, members of parliament will bring it into the light, public light. Probably I'm Volodymyr Ghetto, coordinator of all Ukrainian movement, saving Ukrainian people and saving integrity of the state. Probably we are speaking too much about the problem and do not recollect Konrad Adenauer's experience, who turned Nazi ideals of in Germany, put an end to criminal atmosphere, and maybe we need to create alternative non-partisan government of people's trust, which would be able to reach the borders of March 1st within 1 month. And in order to push Putin out from the territory of Ukraine. It seems to me that there is such a rule in the philosophy which states that let us not multiply the concepts. We have to force them to carry out, to comply with our constitution. I don't think that we should multiply governments. This will, you may establish one more discussion club, but today for us it is important to make Ukrainian institutions workable despite of the personalities of those who lead them. As for
the question is, you provide terminological explanation that there was a fascist coup in Donbas with the support of Russian or other governments. We cannot prove it. I believe that at the international level we'll be able to do that, and Ukrainian state doesn't have the definition of fascism on some Ukrainian territories which Ukrainian citizens but criminals created. And to say now that my father is a fascist because he voted for the Party of Regions, I wouldn't like it to happen. We need to develop the terms where all the requirements would be taken into account. I agree. We would like to have not special illustration law but court in the country, so that the court works and defines the guilt of this or that person. The transparent court which is trusted by the society, that is what we need to create. And like regional Donetsk, a person from Donetsk who came here, this shouldn't be characterizing people. Thank you. One more question. Or maybe the remark. Vladlen is the member of the team of organizers of pro-Ukrainian actions in Donetsk, one of the participants who is somewhat late. I would like to say that, well, many good things were said. I believe that in Donbas we do need Konrad Adenauer, who can develop a new strategy of development of these regions, but first we need to finish war. And then I believe instead of Lukyanchenko, Shatsky, there will be a new Konrad Adenauer. Who will that be? Taruta Saakyan or Berg? We do not know, but this will be this person who will be creating a new sense in regional policy within the context of one single Ukraine. Another important issue that was mentioned by Konstantin, it's about Azovmash company. That's not the only company like that. We have MPs who are normal MPs. They have to write requests to the General Prosecutor of Ukraine on investigating the processes taking place in Azovmash. When we had our state ownership there, and the companies who were working as holdings, well, basically there is something for the state prosecutor's office to investigate there, because the control over the company of Savchuk family, and in the latest years of Yuri Ivanushenko and other people, they were robbing the company and made it so that if a state puts its own person, the person will not be able to manage the company because everything's stolen and main assets are taken to other companies. So first we need to make an investigation. The processes are to be sped up, and that is very important. Any other colleagues, questions, dear colleagues? We said what was a year ago, what's happening now. So Donbas, spring of 2016, Ukrainian flag over Donetsk. It could not be anything else. We all believe in the strategy of restoring the control over the border and normalization of the situation. And Crimea, well, is also another topic. We want to have our natural borders, the borders that no one doubts, and if we call peacekeepers, then only at the line of the state border. And we also need to think about the mission which will make it impossible for anyone to cross the border. I'd like to add, we forget that before we have a mission, international mission, it has to recognize our borders. There are many international documents that recognize them before Putin's Gaidamak came here. We need not just to request for the support, because our right for being autonomous in the border, within the borders, is the natural right of people who are in harmony there. And we shouldn't forget that that is the part of Ukraine. Ukraine remembers how Charles the Great was crowned, Polish kings were crowned, and Ukraine exists in this or that way. There are people here in this geographic niche, and so this is not just a border of Europe on the border with Russia.
This is our collective right. Project, optimistic scenario. I can imagine this day a year ahead in Donetsk. Just an example, in one of the main squares, we will have friendship festival of more than 132 different ethnic minorities, and where everybody celebrates peace and celebrates the event of economic forum devoted to the economic development of Donbas for next 10 years. And there is the vision that it becomes the venue for a new urban construction, new industrial development. Actually, this is going to be like a new pilot project, not just for Ukraine, but for the entire European space. Actually, that civilizational breakdown which we observed today in Donbas, I believe it will give birth to development of the new community in the future. Thank you very much. I would add to the territorial integrity and borders of Ukraine. Today we are celebrating anniversary of the UN resolution about territorial integrity of Ukraine. Let in a year there be big concern day, the day of festivals and celebrations.